So, look, if you just look at science, there are certain things they study and certain things they don't study. For example, they spend a lot of time studying particle physics. Who cares? Can I ask you this question? Who cares about particle physics? They spend billions, trillions of dollars on this stupid thing. They built something called the CERN particle collider to figure out what the underlying atom is, okay? Is it really important? Isn't solving world poverty more important? I don't know. You can take all that money you spend on stupid collider and make sure everyone in the world has enough to eat. They don't want to do that though. All right? You also have focus on outer space, AI, okay? So the very direction of science, it's very, very specific, okay? They're trying to achieve a materialist understanding of the world. And also, if you try to, this is the collider, okay? Again, I don't understand why they're spending trillions of dollars on this stupid thing. This is the current collider, LHC, in Switzerland, and now they're going to build a bigger one. And you see how big it is, right? What are they trying to do here? Are they really trying to figure out particle physics? Maybe, maybe not. All right? All right, guys, Jacob Frank. What Jacob Frank tells us is there are different dimensions, okay? And another dimension is Big Brother, who's a friend of his, but he's stuck in his dimension. He's trying to come to our dimension, but he needs our help. So what's CERN particle accelerator trying to do, right? Is it really trying to discover particle physics, or is it really trying to break the dimensions, like they did with the nuclear bomb? Okay, do you understand? People believe the nuclear bomb, it was really about creating an interdimensional portal for Big Brother to come into. And now people are saying, is it possible the CERN particle accelerator is trying to bring in these interdimensional demons to our world to conquer us, to enslave us? That would make a lot more sense than particle physics, okay, guys? All right. What does science not study, okay? It doesn't study consciousness, which is the number one problem in the world, right? Wouldn't it be nice to know how we think, okay? Wouldn't it be nice to know how I come up with the ideas I do in class and teach it to you, and how you respond to my ideas? Which is a much more basic problem in particle physics. We don't do that, guys, okay? There's absolutely no money or very limited funding in the study of consciousness. Imagination, intuition, anything in material spirit, okay? Like ghosts or spirits, we don't study at all. Religious truth. We also don't study kindness, happiness, and love. Okay? We don't study what is the basis of these things. We don't care. We don't study telepathy, connection. We don't study intelligence of animals and plants. We also don't study ancient architecture and civilizations. So if you go to these ancient sites like Göbekli Tepe, we discussed Göbekli Tepe before, we only have uncovered 5% of it, okay? We don't care what is underneath Göbekli Tepe. Because it's possible that if we were to discover everything, then it would refute traditional paradigms of the world, including evolution. All right? So science is focused on spreading one particular paradigm about the world and discounting everything else. All right? So why is that? Okay. Another thing that's really interesting about science is it hasn't really improved in the past 50, 70 years. We're spending billions, trillions of dollars on science, but we haven't really improved science that much. There have been no great discoveries. And there are three reasons why, okay? The first is specialization. You're only allowed to focus on one very specific problem. And without generalists, without being able to think of science very broadly, it's hard to come up with new discoveries. All right? The other thing is you have a very strict bureaucracy. So as a scientist, you spend most of your time actually applying for funding. You actually don't spend most of your time trying to solve the problems of the universe. And the third thing is credentialism, where if you don't have a certain PhD and you don't belong to a major research university, you're not allowed to talk about science. Okay? So because of these three reasons, it's hard to do science. It's hard to discover truth. And that's the intention. The intention is to prevent people from discovering the truth of the world. Okay? Now, science is not very good at creating new things, but it's very good at faking things. Okay? It's very good at faking things. Also, guys, it's possible they might fake something else, called an alien invasion. Science is very good at that. It's not good at creating spaceships, but it's good at faking spaceships, okay? There's a difference. All right. So this is Thomas Kuhn, and he wrote something called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. And he just says it's natural for paradigms, new ideas, it takes a very long time for paradigms to take shape. But then if that's the case, how do we explain Einstein? The moment he proposed relativity, boom, he's famous, world famous, okay? How do you explain Darwin? The moment he proposed evolution, boom, he's world famous. It's really strange like this way, okay? And so one explanation is secret societies control the world, they have a certain eschatology, and they are promoting things that push their eschatology forward. And that's how the world works, okay? So you think, okay, all right. We also discussed last class the idea of content speak. Written by this Jew in Britain who becomes the first Jewish prime minister, Benjamin Disraeli. And it's about how Jews control the world. And we were like, why is this happening? And I said, because it's part of the plan. Because not only are Jews supposed to prosper in the West, but people are supposed to think that they are part of a grand conspiracy, okay? Because the end goal is anti-Semitism and force them to return to Israel. Okay? All right. So, with this plan in motion, obviously these secret societies cannot themselves come out and propose this plan, the secret societies. Okay? So they have different individuals do this for them. This is Theodor Herzl, who is considered the founder of Zionism. The idea of Zionism is that Jews deserve their own homeland, preferably in Palestine, okay? Current day Israel. And he wrote a book called The State for the Jews, okay? And it was heavily promoted in 1896. You also have something called the Schofield Bible, okay? Which is to take Newton's plan and turn it and then explain how the Bible and the plan work together, okay? And this is called premillennial dispensationalism. Okay, don't worry about the idea, okay? Okay. All right. So 1917, you have Lord Rothschild. Okay. Balfour, the British government is sending a letter to Lord Rothschild saying, I have the pleasure of allowing you to create a homeland for the Jews. Okay? So again, this is part of the plan where the British want to create Israel, but they're blaming the Jews for it, okay? They're saying, it's the Jews who want to create Israel. Okay, so in 1948, they create the nation of Israel. Okay, this is Theodor Herzl. And remember, okay, the nation of Israel, it is not part of this grand plan. It's what the Jews aspire to. It's what the Jews want. It's all initiated by the Jews, okay? This is really important. Okay. Now, one thing that they say, one thing that the Israelis say is that we deserve Palestine because this is what God promised to us in the Bible. We are descendants of the Israelites. We are Hebrew. We're all one blood. Now, the great thing about Jews, okay, and this is why I have tremendous respect for Jews, is these Jewish intellectuals, they are first and foremost committed to the truth. So this is Arthur Koestler, okay, who is a Jewish intellectual, and he wrote something called the 13th Tribe. In this book, what he tells us is, this is nonsense, okay? The Jews, most of them don't come from Israel. They don't come from the Middle East. They come from Ukraine, okay? And this is called the 13th Tribe. And it explains what happened, okay? So, Amber, could you read, please? Yes. All right, could you read this passage, okay?
At the beginning of the 8th century, the world was polarized between the two superpowers representing Christianity and Islam.
So these two powers are the Byzantine Empire as well as the Abbasid Caliphate, okay?
Their ideological doctrines were welded to power politics pursued by the classical methods of propaganda, subversion, and military conquest. The Khazar Empire represented a third force, which had proved equal to either of them, both as an adversary and an ally. But it could only maintain its independence by accepting neither Christianity nor Islam, for either choice would have automatically subordinated it to the authority of the Roman emperor of the Caliph of Baghdad.
Okay, so do you understand this idea? It's very simple. You have these three powers in Eurasia. You have the Byzantines and you have the Abbasids, okay? Byzantines are Christian. The Abbasids are Muslim. And these are the two dominant religions. And the Khazars think they're a power, and if they convert to, right now they're pagan, if they convert to Christianity, they now have to obey Byzantine. If they convert to Islam, they now have to obey the Abbasids. So they don't do either, okay? So they pick another religion, which is Judaism, right? And it makes sense because Judaism is the first religion. It is from Judaism in which you have Islam as well as Christianity. And therefore, Judaism is superior. And therefore, we Khazars are superior, okay? So this makes perfect sense, right? Keep on going.
There had been no lack of efforts by either court to convert Khazars to Christianity or Islam, but all they resulted in was the exchange of diplomatic courtesies, dynamic intermarriages, and shifting military alliances based on mutual self-interest. Relying on its military strength, the Khazar kingdom, with its hinterland of vassal tribes, was determined to preserve its position as the third force, leader of the uncommitted nations of the steppes.
Okay. So the Khazar Empire is very ambitious as well. Okay, it sees itself as a great power. Eventually, it wants to unite the different tribes of steppe nations and conquer the world. But to do that, it needs its own distinct identity. So it's not going to convert to Christianity or Islam. All right, keep on going.
At the same time, their intimate contacts with the Byzantium and the Caliphate had taught the Khazars that their primitive shamanism was not only barbaric and outdated compared to the great monotheistic creeds, but also unable to confer on the leaderships the spiritual and legal authority which the rulers of the two theocratic world powers, the Caliph and the Emperor, enjoyed. Yet the conversion to either creed would have meant submission, the end of independence, and thus would have defeated its purpose. What could have been more logical than to embrace a third creed, which was uncommitted towards either of the two, yet represented of the venerable foundation of both?
Yeah, okay, this is a very simple idea. Monotheism is very important because the idea of one God gives ultimate authority to one person, which allows for the creation of empire, right? Otherwise, every God is equal and you have like a lot of gods. So it's important to have one God. You have three religions that celebrate one God. You have Islam, which is doing very well. You have Christianity, which is doing really well. You have Judaism. And no one's practicing Judaism, so let's just take it for ourselves. Really simple, okay? So this was a mass conversion.